Hey, greetings everybody. Ben and eLearning with Tim, and we have Jared Anthony. And today we invited Jared to come and talk about academic integrity, the theme of the module. And Jared was kind enough to join us in our little studio, and he prepared some documents for us that he wanted to share. So, can you kind of give us a little introduction of what you prepared, and then just go ahead and jump into it?
Well, yeah, I was a little uncertain about how this process was going to go, so I typed up a little script for myself. So I'm going to try to read through that without seeming like I'm just reading a script. And it even includes an introduction to myself in it. Excellent. And it even includes a send-off, but I'm aware that at the end of my script, we'll do a little bit of chatting as well.
Yeah, we'll have some time for a Q&A. So.
Okay. Well, great. Well, so of all things, the title of my talk here is Academic Integrity in Online Classes. I'm Jared Anthony from the English department here at SFCC. I've been teaching online since 2002, and I'd like to talk about how I ensure academic integrity in my online classes, but I'd like to start by saying that I'm not going to talk about Respondus or any other type of lockdown software or anything like that. My focus instead is on curriculum and pedagogy. On the curriculum side, all of my major assignments, which are always paper since I'm an English composition instructor, revolve around my students' experiences and goals. In English 99, they write about why they're taking classes at SFCC, how well the career coach tool works relative to what they wrote about in the first paper, articles they'd recommend to readers who share their goals, and letters to themselves about what they'd like to remember from the learning experiences they've had so far. In English 101, they describe how they've been using writing in their lives so far, how that compares to the writing they'll be asked to do as they work their ways through academia, how people in their chosen career fields use writing, and how the writing they did throughout the term demonstrates their acquisition of the course learning outcomes. In English 102, they write about the most important thing they've learned so far about academic writing or about themselves as academic writers, what counts as high-quality evidence in their chosen fields, how information is presented graphically in those fields, and important research gaps that exist in those fields. All of this focus is on their own goals, and their own learning helps my students resist any potential impulse to buy or borrow an essay from someone else. In fact, I've had far fewer, nearly zero, complaints about not getting to write about what they want to write about since I switched to this theme a few years ago across all my composition classes. Students love to write about their own interests, and what could be more interesting than their own experiences and dreams. Of course, in all of my composition classes, we spend a lot of time learning how to properly attribute information to sources and cite them according to established conventions as well, in order to build authorial credibility and avoid charges of unintentional plagiarism. So that I know that kind of touches on the academic integrity thing, but that's really the smallest part. That's Of course we're doing that. Of course we're making sure we cite our sources. On the pedagogy side, each paper sequence involves a series of writing tasks that foster student-student interaction and student-instructor interaction. We start with a discussion forum that serves as a collaborative brainstorming activity. Students post their preliminary ideas and research findings and then comment on classmates' posts. I comment on both the posts and the replies to classmates' posts. And that all lays the foundation for a working draft, which gets posted and reviewed by classmates and the instructor. I also include a step in the review process that requires students to post reflective commentaries on what they got out of that particular review round in terms of what the reviewers told them and what they saw in the drafts they reviewed. This closes the loop and ensures that they are reading and taking seriously the feedback they've received. Points are assigned to each of these steps, so a student who skips them and just submits the final draft ends up losing more points than would be gained by using someone else's paper instead of their own. Right. Course evaluations consistently tell me that students also truly value the collaboration and opportunities to see how their classmates are approaching assignments. I realize these methods may seem particular to the subject I teach, and perhaps they are. However, I think most, if not all, disciplines could incorporate opportunities for students to make personal connections to what they're studying in the assigned tasks themselves, or like in reflective journals. I could imagine a reflective journal in a science class or a geography class or a history class. Tapping into intrinsic motivation is certainly worth the effort to experiment with such techniques. And of course, it's a lot harder to find a paper for sale that talks about a student's own interests and goals than it is to just write the thing. Also, breaking major assignments into stages resists wholesale plagiarism as well, because most students recognize that the effort to reverse engineer a paper trail of notes and drafts exceeds the effort required to just do the assigned work in the first place. And such scaffolding doesn't seem to me to be limited to the composition classroom. So I ended this by saying I'd be very happy to talk with you about any or all of this in more detail. Just write to me. Get the play on words, writing, write to me. Thanks. But that's not really my wrap up because we're going to keep chatting.
No, but I like how you did wrap this up, and I like how you talk about an iterative approach to this personal assessment, right? And where it is step by step, and it is involving their peers, and it's involving collaboration.
Lots of interaction, collaboration.
You're taking away any reason to cheat, or really any purpose, any skill to actually cheat.
Yeah,
you know?
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. I don't see any cheating in any of my classes. It does not happen. I know that might sound overly confident, but when you start with, I think I might write about this, and then you see a little bit of research or a little bit of paragraphing, and then you see a rough draft, and then you see it turn into, the student wrote it.
Because you're seeing the thought process along the way.
Yeah. And I'm seeing where the comments I made and the comments their classmates made get woven in as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Even if someone did buy a process, you wouldn't see your own comments reflected in it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's right. That's another check.
And you can apply this to any sort of project, any sort of writing.
I think so.
And I think that's a great way of introducing writing or big research is in that small little iterative chunks. Right?
Oh, definitely. Chunking things up makes it easier for students to tackle big projects. Makes them feel more confident about doing it because they get to see modeling and they get collaboration and they get smaller chunks to do at a time.
That's right.
But also, I think it obviously puts a hedge against last second, oh no, I don't know what to do, I better go grab something somebody else did. They just don't get into that bind because they've been going through a process all along.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the ideas that we've kind of explored is the idea of reducing the reasons to cheat.
Yeah.
And not only the opportunities, but the incentive.
Yeah, exactly.
And if your course design and your assignment design has led them through the steps and has, others have been involved and you've been involved with giving feedback and directing that process, then they're not going to get into the last minute thing of, oh, it's due tomorrow and I've got nothing.
Yep.
So they're not going to have that reason to go copy something off the web.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Or borrow their brother's paper.
I do want to ask you about tilt. So Jared may not want to admit, but he is well knowledgeable in tilt. So
yes. So tilt, teaching. Transparency in learning and teaching. Transparency in learning and teaching. I believe it's currently housed at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. But I don't think it started there. I'm drawing a blank on where it started, but it's currently, in recent years, it's moved to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. It's kind of a branded assignment design process or template philosophy. And it's grounded in a philosophy. I mean, that transparency is really the key to the whole thing.
Right.
And a big part of that is that you foreground what the intended learning outcomes are for every assignment. Why are we doing this? Why am I asking you to do this? It involves a lot of meta commentary. Why are we doing this thing that I'm asking you to do in this assignment? And it also makes transparent the evaluation criteria. And I think those two things in combination, the intended learning outcomes and the evaluation criteria, making those explicit and transparent to students, again, kind of reduces that motivation to cheat or to plagiarize or to just not do assignments because it seems more reasonable. It seems more doable. They understand why you're asking them to do it. It's not this is isolated thing that comes out of nowhere. You integrate it into what we've been doing in the whole course through the course learning outcomes, through explicit course learning outcomes, and then giving the assessment criteria through a rubric, or it doesn't even have to be a rubric. Whatever the assessment criteria are, making
an example or
giving models, giving examples, whatever those are. That helps a student who is maybe not as confident as other students recognize, okay, I can figure that out. I can get there. I can, and it gives them a chance to ask questions about those criteria. And I think that's really important. I want to step away from TILT itself for just a second to talk about that philosophy that's undergirding it, which is this big belief in transparency. The thing about it is it's huge for students, of course, because they know what their target is. Mm-hmm. It's also really important for instructors, because making your criteria, making your motives for an assignment and making your criteria for evaluating performance on assignment keeps you from applying occluded values to your grading.
Sure.
And that's a real equity point, because if we come from a similar background, then we can have these occluded values that we don't really make explicit and we don't make transparent. Occluded, like blinded from us, like blocked. Like if we have an occlusion in our eyes, we can't see it, right? So just these kind of invisible criteria. If we're operating with these invisible values, like, I don't even say this to myself because it's occluded from myself, but maybe I'm thinking, I don't really like this performance very much. It didn't really touch my heart. Well, did the student know that it was supposed to touch your heart? Did you ever say to yourself that you need to have your heart touched in order to cough up that A or whatever?
Thinking about your assignment design and developing some sort of grading criteria is going to limit that type of, gut feeling of when you're grading something.
Exactly.
And when you're stuck with, you teach writing, so when you have that stack of grading, that first paper you grade and that last paper you grade, if you don't have a really strong rubric, those grades are different. And you can go back and look at that first paper and be like, oh wow, I was very strong, or I was way too easy on this student. By the time I got to the end, I was tired and angry, and I was the cruelest grader ever.
That's right. That's so right. There's inhabited influences. There's bodily influences like being tired, getting hungry, whatever that can influence how you grade. And there's also these things called like the shadow effect and the halo effect, where one performance has an effect on the next student.
Right. So you read the second paper and you think,
well,
it wasn't as good as that one.
Yeah, or it's much better than that one, so now I'm inflating it. Or and those are things you want to be aware of. But you don't even really have to be all that aware of them if you make your criteria explicit to yourself and then to your students, and then you just hold yourself to that. And that's really one of the reasons I'm so fond of rubrics, is not only making it available for the students to know what their target is and to be able to ask questions along the way to getting to that target, but being able to hold myself to that, to the things I've decided, this is what I need to see that the students learned what she was supposed to. Holding myself to that as I'm grading helps me say, oh, wait a minute, I know you're hungry, but don't take that out on there's nowhere on there to say I'm mad because I'm hungry. The rubric has what it has from the beginning to the end of the stack.
And to connect this back to equity, that rubric and that grading criteria or that example can kind of help reduce that fear factor of that student. And we're kind of talking in this module of what causes cheating. What is the impetus of it, for the majority of students? And is it just pure panic? They get to the point to where I have to get a certain score, and this test has a certain amount of value, and so I need to perform well. Now I'm going to panic, and I'm going to resort to cheating. Things like that can help reduce for a student, that anxiety.
Yes, the anxiety, and you're absolutely right that the further I come from academia, right? It's one thing if my parents were both college professors, and then just imagine all the gradations that get reduced away from that. First generation students who've maybe never known anyone in their family, or maybe anyone in their close circle who's gone to college.
And now you tell them write a 6-page essay.
And
rather than write a paragraph, and then let's work that into a 2-paragraph in that iterative project-based approach.
Exactly. And they're sitting there, the students who are furthest from an academic background are sitting there looking around thinking, assuming everyone else knows everything. Right. I'm the only fraud here. I'm the only one the only bounder who snuck under the gate and got in here. And this is where they're going to find out because I'm not going to be able to do this. Well, yeah, and they're going to be much more likely to feel that way if it's this monolith of you need to do this thing,
Right.
and I'm not going to tell you how to do it, and I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to grade it. You have to do it. And I think the thing about that is the reason professors keep doing that, good-minded, good-hearted professors still end up doing that, is that they do get students who can perform well without any steps,
Without any
and
intervention.
without any explicit criteria. And I would argue, why? Well, because they probably came from backgrounds that were closer to academia, so they probably share more of those occluded values. And so, wow, she just seems to know exactly what I was thinking. Well, isn't that great? But what you're really doing, that happiness you're feeling, is you're really amplifying inequities of where the students are coming from. The ones that came more prepared, you're giving them that stamp of approval. You're just like what I hoped I'd see. And the ones that aren't getting that because they didn't.
And you have to be careful not to use that as validation that your instruction was correct and that your assignment was correct.
And I don't need no stinking rubrics.
Yeah,
No.
my assignment goes fine for most of my students.
Yeah, or the ones that,
Yeah.
or the ones that are like me.
Yeah,
Right.
the ones that get it.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
If you had a takeaway for an instructor that wanted to reevaluate some of their assessments, what would be one thing that you would advise them to look at?
well, I'm gonna come back to rubrics because I realize rubrics don't necessarily fit in with a Scantron test, but I'm not a real big fan of Scantron tests anyway. But aside from that, I think coming up with a rubric, honestly, I don't even want to say this because it kind of sounds sacrilegious to me after everything I just said and after everything I believe. But even if you didn't share it with students, even if they didn't see it before they had to perform, even if we didn't follow that kind of tilt approach of making all that stuff up front in the assignment handout and the assignment instructions, it would still be a benefit because you would have still gone through the process of making sure you've thought about what are you really looking for in this assignment, and what are you really going to value in students' performances. So even if you're really unsure about rubrics, or you've heard things about them, or you've had some experiences with them that were not as amazing as you had hoped they would be, I'd say give it another try from that perspective of saying, I want to make sure that I'm aware of why I'm asking students to do this and what I'm going to value in their responses to it. I think that's probably the most valuable thing based on what we've been talking about.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jared. Thanks for joining us. We
Well,
appreciate
thanks
your
for
time.
having me.
Yeah, appreciate you.
See ya.